The manhwa starts amid a relentless rainstorm, where a swordsman and his band of soldiers stood their ground, surrounded by the lifeless bodies of their comrades and enemies. The swordsman grew increasingly frustrated as the ruthless assailants, clad in dark attire and masks, relentlessly chipped away at their defenses. The cold-blooded killers launched another coordinated attack, their powerful momentum and exceptional blade skills swiftly dismantling the soldiers' formation. After dealing with the vanguard, the killers wasted no time shifting their attention to the swordsman, who was the leader of their group. Unfazed by the sight of his fallen comrades, the swordsman maintained unwavering focus on the enemy's blade. The young student displayed impressive creativity in his approach, strategically choosing the most effective way to defeat multiple enemies at once. His swift strikes left a trail of blood on the ground, showcasing his fierce determination. Despite their best efforts, the battle appeared to stretch on indefinitely. The swordsman embraced the challenge of making his last stand, undeterred by the overwhelming odds he faced. He expressed his anger towards the attackers, calling them heartless individuals. The swordsman had planned to engage in transactions with the area's influential military and economic leaders, but the circumstances had unexpectedly become perilous. They had made an agreement, only for him to be deceived, both literally and metaphorically. Regardless, the swordsman was determined to defend his master in the carriage, no matter what, even if it meant giving up his own life. The young leader inspired his remaining comrades, encouraging them to persevere with all their might, promising them that assistance was imminent. The culprit, on the other hand, had foreseen this turn of events and had arranged a malevolent surprise. The supposed reinforcement unit, intended to assist them in battle, had already been ruthlessly annihilated. The severed heads were collected as a somber reminder of the challenging situation faced by the main forces. The swordsman was left questioning the state of the world after witnessing the brutal annihilation of the cavalry by an incredibly powerful man. As an approaching banner came into view, the true gravity of their predicament became increasingly evident and incredibly frightening. The Myram Alliance leader, the legendary first heaven-piercing sword, Dam Chunha, had joined the battle. Upon observing the desolate battlefield, he couldn't help but recognize the impressive might of the Ice Pavilion, astonished by their resilience in withstanding the Myram Alliance. The swordsman, with a bold and rebellious spirit, grinned and fired back at the corrupt leader, confidently stating that his cockiness was only possible because the master of the Ice Pavilion was nowhere to be found. Filled with fury, the master assassins could not bear any form of disrespect towards their leader. Speaking out against their lord was considered a serious offense, resulting in severe consequences. Just as things were about to get worse, a figure emerged from the carriage. It was a woman, her face filled with a mix of fear and concern. She passionately urged everyone to take a momentary break, and the swordsman respectfully referred to her as Miss Wayan. She confidently assured him that she would be perfectly okay. Unexpectedly, the Crooked Lord also ordered his death squad to cease their actions, and they obediently followed his command. Amidst the chaotic battlefield, a young girl and a formidable elderly man faced off against each other. Miss Wayan attempted to initiate a conversation with the Lord, but he went on a rant, accusing her of being misled by monkeys and bringing shame to Dam Chunho's reputation. However, he recognized that errors are a part of life and can be pardoned. Underscoring his position as her father, he offered her a chance to go back to where she truly belonged. Miss Wayan asked if the remaining men of the Ice Pavilion would be spared if she agreed. Her father's stern gaze left no room for negotiation. Confronted with this situation, Miss Wayan found herself compelled to offer yet another apology to her demanding father. The leader of the Myram Alliance paused to absorb his daughter's reply before swiftly drawing his sword, its blade catching the moonlight. The swordsman, filled with a surge of creativity and resourcefulness, attempted to intervene in the face of the impending tragedy. But alas, his efforts were in vain. Without any hesitation, the determined individual sternly reprimanded their daughter for going against their wishes. As the swordsman sought vengeance, the lifeless form of Miss Wayan fell to the wet earth, leaving her father to mourn the loss of his beloved child. He said he lost her because of mindless orcs. With the matter resolved, he made a firm commitment to reclaim the essence of the Central Plains. It was the responsibility of his ruthless soldiers to handle the situation and tidy up the aftermath. The assault acted quickly, eager to spill the blood of the Ice Pavilion. Nevertheless, the swordsman stood confidently, effortlessly dispatching the initial onslaught with his own master technique. With unwavering determination, he rallied his remaining comrades, inspiring them to bravely battle until the very end. After Miss Wayan's passing, Their sole focus shifted towards seeking revenge. The sight of the once lively woman's distressing condition motivated them to confront the culprits with all their might. As Miss Wayan's consciousness faded, her only desire was to return. She had made a commitment to someone, but now it felt like an insurmountable challenge. Maybe in a different existence, she would have the opportunity to fulfill that pledge. In the Ice Pavilion, the leader of the pavilion, Northern Sea Palace Master Seol Mudok, sat on his throne, deep in thought as he tried to make sense of the reports he had received. The Ice Pavilion, along with Lord Bai Muyue, who was on a diplomatic mission to negotiate with the Martial Alliance, fell victim to a surprise attack by the Murim Alliance and suffered a devastating defeat. As the messenger repeated the report, Seol Mudok's composure finally broke. A powerful storm erupted from the throne, casting a brilliant light across the room. The messenger and his loyal aides stood in silence, witnessing their master's fury taking shape. Seol Mudok stood up from his throne, driven by a burning desire for revenge. With unwavering determination, he set his sights on the Murim Alliance, determined to eliminate every single member and ensure their complete eradication, no matter the cost. Backed by the formidable combat force of the Northern Sea Palace, the Central Plains were on the brink of witnessing an extraordinary demonstration of power. Years later, on a chill winter evening, the epic battle fought by the Northern Sea Palace reached its thrilling climax. With their relentless drive, it was only a matter of time before they pushed the formidable Alliance leader to their limits. Amidst the chilling landscape of crimson snow and fallen comrades, Lord Dam Chunha pondered the devastating defeat that had befallen them. Overwhelmed by numerous severe injuries and completely drained of his strength, he pleaded for a quick end. Master Seol Mudok looked down at the supposed powerhouse with a strong sense of resentment. Before reaching his breaking point, he passionately questioned the motives of a father who could commit such a heinous act against his own daughter. He sought to understand the unfathomable reasons behind a man taking the life of his own flesh and blood. To the astonishment of everyone, Dam Chunha couldn't help but let out a mischievous laugh instead of providing an answer. From his point of view, the leader's daughter's involvement in romantic games with someone like Seol Mudok was quite disappointing. It would have been a bigger mistake to let her keep living and further damaging his reputation. Mudok didn't waste any more words on the person. With a flick of his hand, he conjured the chilling power of ice. In his final moments, Dam Chunha couldn't resist taunting Mudok one last time, boldly stating that although the palace master had conquered Jiangnan, he would never achieve his deepest desires. He suffered a devastating injury, with ice piercing through his chest. Despite his impressive achievements, Dam Chunha's overconfidence proved to be his undoing. As he faced his last moments, a montage of memories played out before him. He remembered the joy of carrying his young daughter on his shoulders, the times when his ambition consumed him and he neglected his role as a father, and the instances when he exerted too much control over Wayan's life. He recalled the evening she reached her breaking point and escaped from her ordinary life. The final recollection that plagued him was the instance when he tragically took his daughter's life. Even in his last breath, the creature felt a burning anger and bitter resentment. That night was a turning point of great significance. With the passing of Dam Chunha, the leader of the Murim Alliance, the epic battle that had raged on for 6 years finally reached its conclusion. The legendary figure of the Northern Sea Palace Master Seol Mudok, emerged as the triumphant victor. That evening marked his rise to power as the undisputed leader of the Central Plains. Nevertheless, Seol Mudok showed no signs of happiness or excitement. He peacefully observed the moon, embracing the gentle snowfall. After the war came to an end, a new era of tranquility emerged at a solitary, withering flower rested upon the Lord's desk in his private chambers. When all was said and done, Seol Mudok was left with nothing but a wilting flower. He distinctly recalled Wayan enthusiastically summoning him to witness something remarkable. With a burst of energy, she burst into his room, proudly presenting a beautifully blossomed flower, the Lotus of Love. Legend has it that this flower would only reveal its vibrant petals when it sensed a deep connection between two people. Wayan couldn't help but feel emotional. Although she had always been confident in Seol Mudok's affection for her, she started to feel anxious about the lotus not blooming. However, it had flourished magnificently, providing evidence that their affection was mutual and that Mudok genuinely cared for her. He held her close, showing that she was the center of his attention. Ever since, he had felt immense gratitude towards the flower for bringing Wayan so much joy. With an unwavering devotion, Mudok planned to transform an entire garden into a breathtaking display of Lotus of Love flowers, a heartfelt tribute to the person who captured his heart. Despite his best efforts, she remained ingrained in his memory. Indeed, he had fought against the entire Miram alliance on her behalf. The dying Lotus of Love unexpectedly started to shimmer and blossom, much to Mudok's amazement. Baffled by this seemingly impossible occurrence, he called upon his loyal shadow, Myong, who promptly materialized. Mudok was desperate for someone who could unravel the mysterious events that unfolded right before his eyes. He was willing to go to great lengths, even scouring the vast central plains in search of knowledgeable experts. Myong quickly carried out the master's commands. After a few days, all the necessary preparations were finished, and a group of individuals was escorted to the Grand Palace. The Manhwa, known for their extensive knowledge, had assembled at the Northern Sea Ice Palace, yet they were unaware of the purpose behind the new superpower's invitation. Their moment of uncertainty quickly dissipated when a powerful voice from above beckoned them to approach. A door swung open, casting a brilliant beam of light upon them. Despite their hesitations, they had no alternative but to move forward. As they stepped outside, the Manhwa were amazed by the incredible sight that unfolded before their eyes. A vibrant garden bursting with an array of beautiful Lotus of Love flowers. Even the most seasoned experts among them had never seen a garden so full of these mythical flowers. Encountering one in a lifetime is a rare occurrence for most individuals. The stems were adorned with an exquisite symbol of love, as if delicately crafted by divine hands, leaving no room for doubt that they were truly the Lotus of Love. The Manhwa were in awe of the impressive cultivation of an uncommon flower in such large quantities. One of the Manhwa asked the others if they liked the flowers, and in their excitement, they almost forgot to inquire about the man's identity. Seol Mudok presented himself as the garden's proprietor, but among the ordinary people, he held the title of the supreme leader of the Central Plains, the most influential figure in the kingdom. He described how their love had brought forth these blossoms, but when she passed away, the first flower withered away as well. Surprisingly, that lone flower had somehow been brought back to life and blossomed once again. Although the Manhwa were highly knowledgeable scholars in the Central Plains, this phenomenon may have been outside their area of expertise. Luckily, the oldest Manhwa was able to come up with a potential explanation. Mudok's excitement peaked as he eagerly requested the old man to reveal his theory. The older individual theorized that this occurrence could be ascribed to an individual undergoing rebirth in a different physical form, commonly known as reincarnation. There was a possibility that the palace master's departed love had found a new life somewhere in the world. Mudok's curiosity and obsession were piqued. The old man insisted that if his theory didn't hold, there could be no other explanation for the second bloom. At last, the palace master had regained a semblance of hope. He had succeeded in entering the Central Plains and unifying the entire region, fulfilling the long-cherished wish of the Northern Sea. But all that had remained was emptiness. Now was the time to remedy that. As the Northern Sea prospered, Mudok's longing for Wayan only grew. The day he lost her, he couldn't find a purpose to continue living aside from the burning hatred against the Miram alliance. Mudok demanded details and plans at once. It was said that the Lotus of Love glowed when two lovers were in the same place, a concept they would use as their basis. Mudok knew this to be true. As the night Wayan showed him the lotus, it had glowed for the first time. However, carrying a live flower might prove difficult, so the old man suggested crafting the Lotus of Love into a piece of jewelry for easy transport. Mudok entrusted everything to the old man and the Manhwa, setting a departure date in 10 days. If all went well, he promised to reward each Manhwa with 100 nong of gold, a sum that sounded like generational wealth. The palace master departed from the garden, leaving the scholars to work on the plan. This single meeting had lifted Mudok's spirits from the depths of despair. He had truly believed he would never see the love of his life again, but now Mudok had hope once more. He had a purpose. This time, he swore never to let go of this hope, no matter where Wayan might be. Even if it was in the deepest depths of hell, he would follow. He could only hope that Wayan could wait for him. It had been a while since the search began. The team, led by the palace master, continued to set sail in search of the possibly reincarnated Wayan. Inside the ship, Mudok had been stressing over the routes they needed to scour. They had nearly covered the entire Central Plains, and the only place left to look was Hainan. 3 years and 5 months had passed since he started the search for the love of his life, yet he hadn't found her anywhere in the Central Plains. During this time, he never neglected his cultivation. Mudok had advanced from the transformation realm to the profound realm, experiencing complete metamorphosis twice, and yet the search continued to bear no fruit. His only hope was the region of Hainan. With the Lotus of Love jewelry around his neck, Mudok couldn't afford to give up now. He remembered the last time they shared a meal. He had been vehemently against her going to the meeting in person, but Wayan had insisted that her father had decided to attend the negotiations. She believed that if she was there, maybe the Murim leader would understand Mudok's vision. Mudok had considered the possibility of a trap, but Wayan wanted to put her trust in her father just this once. Upon careful consideration, Mudok had sighed and given in, unable to resist Wayan's whims. He had agreed on the condition that if anything seemed off, she must not hesitate to get out of there and come back to him immediately. Before departing, Wayan had left him something very important, a golden ring fashioned into a necklace. It was a keepsake from her late mother, said to have the power to return to the person who gave it. She believed that the necklace would always lead them back to each other's arms. The last thing Mudok heard her say in her sweet voice was not to worry about her, as she would never leave his side. In hindsight, Mudok regretted letting her go like that. He knew he should have stopped her at all costs back then, but dwelling on what-ifs was futile now, especially when the ship crew was clamoring about an approaching storm down on the deck. The poor shipmates held on for their dear lives as strong winds and heavy rain tested their boat. Mudok came upstairs to see what the chaos was all about. A sudden storm was not on their itinerary at all. Upon seeing the full view of the storm, even the strongest man in the realm was taken aback. Looking to the side, a tidal wave as high as 3 times their ship was moving closer at an alarming speed. Mudok stood his ground and activated his protective key, coupled with the 1,000-pound hammer technique. He braced himself for impact as the waves swallowed the ship whole. Most of the crew were knocked out of the ship, left to fend for themselves in the choppy seawater in the middle of a catastrophic storm. No one was safe. Everyone on the deck was vulnerable to getting swept away. At this rate, this could be everyone's final voyage. Mudok couldn't let that happen on his watch. He activated his telekinetic grasp, conjuring multiple beams of intangible light that swiftly headed for the water. The telekinetic lights dove into the surface to look for any survivors who had been knocked out of the ship. This should be a good start. Mudok was confident that he could rescue everyone in time, but that might not be the case as another tidal wave loomed upon them. This time, it looked a lot bigger than the last one. The remaining crew were frozen in fear of what was about to come. They couldn't survive something like that wave at all. Mudok reached for his blade. He knew that the ship couldn't take much more of this cursed storm, so there might be only one viable option left. He wanted to use his blade and ice manipulation in conjunction with each other to confront the force of nature directly. The temperature around the area suddenly plummeted, sending a chill through the remaining crew. It was only natural, as the Palace Master had a plan to freeze the waves using his freezing ice wind technique. As he prepared his blade for the strike, the Lotus of Love necklace began to emit an unprecedented glow. The brightness of the light was so intense that it cut through the approaching wave with a piercing glow. The attack was abruptly halted when Mudok found himself temporarily blinded by the intense glare of the lights. Being pulled out of the ship, he found himself losing control of his body as he was drawn toward the captivating light in the distance. Following the storm, the ship emerged unscathed, standing strong. The crew was astounded by what they saw. The light was unlike anything they had ever seen before. As the gloomy skies dissipated, a breathtaking tropical paradise unfolded before their eyes, with a stretch of land within reach. As for the Palace Master himself, it seemed that he had also managed to survive the peculiar storm, but when he finally opened his eyes, he appeared to be in a state of utter exhaustion and disarray. As he surveyed his surroundings, he noticed an assortment of luggage and boxes filled with supplies scattered about. He found himself confined within a cramped carriage. How did they even end up in this situation? He recalled battling a tempest out on the open ocean, and in an instant, he found himself in this unfamiliar place. Mudok barely had time to acclimate and orient himself before a piercing scream echoed from outside in the vicinity of the carriage. A group of individuals transporting provisions found themselves pursued by enormous houseflies across a picturesque meadow. A woman and a young girl crouched behind a cluster of leaves, observing as a few houseflies were swiftly eliminated. A scholarly individual and a young person were attempting to ward off the flies using only a meat cleaver. A surprising turn of events saved them from a potential sneak attack by one of the flies. A mysterious force suddenly appeared, obliterating the oversized bug and cleanly severing its body in two. A mysterious force emerged from the luxurious carriage in their traveling group. After everything had calmed down, Seol Mudok's finger remained pointing up in the air. He thought that he must have ended up in a forest somewhere in the Central Plains. However, there was a peculiar energy emanating from this place. From his perspective, these individuals appeared to be from another country. It seemed like he had drifted quite a distance from the mainland of the Central Plains. Then there were these repulsive bug monsters freely soaring through the air, making it impossible to look away. Flies were disgustingly repulsive. Mudok had the ability to eliminate the Miram Alliance leader and claim ultimate power in the realm. However, even he couldn't escape the feeling of revulsion. His grand arrival may have been a bit excessive, causing the first-class carriage to shatter, but there were more urgent matters to attend to. Foreigners and oversized flies swarmed around him, creating a chaotic scene. What on earth was going on with his Central Plains? Mudok's lightning-fast reflexes foiled the fly's attempt to catch him off guard with its sudden burst of speed. In a display of ingenuity, he swiftly unleashed a powerful spell, freezing the bothersome fly within a solid shard of ice. Without even glancing back, the method used was rather harsh, causing the frozen crystal to collapse and shatter the fly's body into tiny fragments of ice shards. Mudok despised the audacity of a wild creature daring to harm humans simply due to its slightly larger size. To him, this was an unimaginable transgression. These sky flies needed to learn their boundaries. Seol Mudok unleashed his creativity and went all out, taking on these insects with a burst of energy. His incredible speed and unmatched skill with a blade set him apart from the rest. His method effortlessly preserved numerous creatures simultaneously through the process of freeze-drying. After gracefully wielding his blade, a mesmerizing ice sculpture of flies materialized before their eyes. Finally, he showcased the grand finale of his magnificent white ice palm, a breathtaking display of ice and snow that resembled a dazzling fireworks show. This should be more than sufficient effort for those insignificant pests. The foreigners were amazed by the incredible abilities of this unique individual. It was truly unimaginable that someone could accomplish such a feat after resolving the issues with the bugs. Seol Mudok shifted his attention to the visitors from another country. A senior gentleman approached him, appearing to introduce himself in a courteous manner, but due to the language barrier, it was challenging to comprehend his words. The elderly gentleman graciously expressed his gratitude to Seol Mudok for successfully eliminating the creatures that had assaulted the caravan. Seol Mudok couldn't comprehend the unfamiliar language that the elderly gentleman was using, yet he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of appreciation. He expressed his regret as he struggled to understand the foreigner's words. He attempted to inquire if there was anyone proficient in the language of the Central Plains, but it became evident that no one possessed that skill. To solve this, the elderly gentleman asked for something from the tall, intellectual guy. Mudok persisted in his attempts to communicate with him, but unfortunately, his efforts were met with no success. The elderly gentleman yearned to express his thoughts, yet he found himself unable to even make a single gesture. Handing Mudok the ring in his palm seemed like the most direct approach. As the palace master pondered the purpose of the ring, the old man suddenly emitted a vibrant, radiant glow. With a spark of imagination, he delicately cradled the ring in his hand, infusing it with a spell that would unlock its hidden meanings. To complete the spell, the elderly gentleman struck a pose reminiscent of a magical girl. It was quite an unsettling experience. To say the least, even Mudok would definitely agree with me on this one. Now, he considered the old man to be quite eccentric. The wise elder cleared his throat, and suddenly he spoke a language that Mudok could fully comprehend. I was captivated. The old man had become fluent in the language of the Central Plains thanks to the ring he possessed. Now that they were able to communicate, the elderly gentleman introduced himself again, this time as Edmund Roll, the esteemed leader of the Roll Merchant Association. He wanted to express his appreciation to Mudok for rescuing their modest merchant association. He was curious about the name of their savior and wanted to ask this incredible mystical warrior. Curious and imaginative, Mudok was intrigued by the concept of a magic swordsman and willingly shared his name. Edmund was completely taken aback by the surprising news. Can you believe this person doesn't even know what a magic swordsman is? Mudok is a true master of combining swordsmanship and magic, embodying the essence of a magic swordsman. It's pretty clear my friend Mudok was completely clueless about the concept of magic. Now, Edmund was feeling extremely overwhelmed. This mysterious individual with silver hair had just demonstrated a mesmerizing display of ice manipulation in front of a captivated audience. However, to everyone's surprise, he professed to have no knowledge of the mystical arts. It's quite intriguing, the palace master thought. He despised being left with unanswered questions. Seol Mudok was growing increasingly frustrated as Edmund struggled to articulate these fundamental ideas. If it weren't for Mudok approaching him with ice magic in hand, demanding answers, he might have stood there pondering indefinitely. Edmund was certain that the person they were dealing with was completely insane. The elderly gentleman entered the room since this Mudok individual was unaware. They would simply explain in straightforward language before becoming extremely upset and going on an intense rampage. Ultimately, Edmund had no choice but to provide an explanation for this unfamiliar notion of magic. They chatted until the sun set. Only then did Mudok feel a sense of fulfillment from the new knowledge he acquired. The palace master could never have fathomed the existence of magic in this region of the Central Plains. The world was incredibly expansive. Edmund couldn't help but notice the constant chatter about the Central Plains, even though he had no clue about its location or significance. When he inquired, Mudok felt a slight sense of offense. Why would this elderly gentleman inquire about the location of the Central Plains when we are already standing right on top of it? Mudok inquired. The elderly gentleman seemed to have misplaced his current whereabouts. He was simply inquiring because it seemed quite remarkable to be unaware of the Central Plains while residing in the very heart of it. Edmund dismissed this as nonsense, but he still held great respect for the formidable swordsman with extraordinary powers. He excitedly described their current location as a forest on the way to the capital of Drake Kingdom, Barhan. The determined lord was firmly committed to his beliefs. He confidently stated that he had never heard anyone refer to the Central Plains as Drake or whatever. He even claimed that Edmund was losing his mental faculties. Nevertheless, Edmund remained composed and maintained that he was merely 50 years old, with plenty of time before any decline in mental abilities. Instead, he was concerned about Mudok, as he persistently claimed they were in the Central Plains after being rescued. If we are unable to reach a definite conclusion, we could simply inquire with the individual who has been observing us from behind the nearby tree. Edmund was taken aback by Leo's unexpected eavesdropping on their conversation. Mudok asked the young man if they were in the Central Plains or Drake. When Leo did not respond immediately, Mudok gave the kid a stern look. Edmund made it clear that Leo might struggle to comprehend his words, but he assured Mudok that he would provide him with a translation ring. With a simple gesture and a powerful incantation, the world of communication would be unlocked before him. Despite the imprudence of entrusting a valuable artifact to an eccentric individual, Edmund refused to tolerate being dismissed as a feeble-minded elderly person, knowing full well that he was in the right. Mudok followed Edmund's instructions, and the ring quickly began to shine with a radiant light. Astonishingly, an array of intricate symbols in various languages swiftly formed into the accessory, leaving the palace master utterly amazed. After the lights dimmed, the true impact of the ring became apparent. He had developed an exceptional ability to comprehend and interpret unfamiliar languages. This was an incredibly innovative display of magic. Now that he could converse with the foreigners, he inquired about the child's name, and Leo introduced himself shyly. The next question was whether the land they were standing on was the Central Plains or the kingdom that Edmund was talking about. Leo responded to the question by posing another question. What exactly were the Central Plains? Leo confirmed that they were in a forest on the path to Barhan, the capital of Drake Kingdom. Mudok adamantly rejected that response and accused the child of experiencing cognitive decline. The old man was convinced that Edmund and the child were plotting against him, but he firmly believed that no matter who Mudok asked from the Merchant Association, they would all give the same response. Based on Edmund's passionate reply, it appeared that he was being genuine. It turned out that this wasn't the Central Plains, as Mudok had initially believed. As he pondered the situation, he couldn't help but find the circumstances that brought him here rather peculiar. Recalling a fierce battle with a tempest while aboard the ship, an event unfolded. As he blinked his eyes open, he found himself confined within a small carriage. Wasn't the straightforward explanation for all this nonsense simple? Was it possible that he was transported to a different location? Master Seol Mudok was deeply perplexed and taken aback by the sudden realization that he had somehow traversed through space. Accepting the reality of his current location on Drake Kingdom soil instead of the Central Plains proved to be quite a challenge. Adding to the already dire situation, a sharp twinge of discomfort surged through his chest. It was a short-lived experience, but it brought a unique kind of discomfort he had never felt before. Mudok tried his best to hide this strange feeling he felt in his dantian just now while Edmund, the businessman, came over to ask if he was starting to believe now. He reckoned that this energy, which was different from anything he had ever experienced, might have caused the sharp internal pain. Well, whatever it was that was lingering in the atmosphere and agitating his core, one thing was for sure: something was not right in this place. Mudok stood up and took off without saying another word to the caravan. They tried to ask him what was up, but he did not reply and just walked off with a grim expression. He needed to check something for himself. He scoured the woods while trying to attune to the energy in nature, and this confirmed that everything felt different from what he was used to. Mudok could sense pure energy swirling around in the air, confirming that this place was definitely different from the Central Plains. Maybe the woods were a little too restrictive, so the palace master decided to use a boulder as his launch pad into the air. Using his superhuman bounce, he took to the skies. He stayed up there for a bit while filtering everything he was sensing and comparing the atmosphere to the one he was accustomed to. Mudok then tried to compress pure energy in his hands. The seemingly simple process that he could do in his sleep in the Central Plains was a laborious job in this place. Still, he did not become the strongest man on the continent by giving up, even when put in an unfamiliar position. Mudok's supreme talent enabled him to manifest a complete technique. He had to scream, shout, and pour his all to do so. Though the strenuous task of compressing pure energy into his hands to be absorbed into his body was challenging, just one session basically doubled the amount of chi accumulated in his dantian. That was some good news at the very least. However, the problem and mystery of how he ended up in this foreign place still stood. Mudok's heart and mind were still focused on his goal, to find Wayan as soon as possible. While he was aimlessly flying through the air, he noticed the jewelry dangling around his neck. Could it be that this teleportation mumbo-jumbo was caused by the light emitted by the necklace back in the thunderstorm? Wayan had said that this special accessory had the power to return to the person who gave it. After all, maybe this was his chance. If he was sent here to these foreign lands, it must be for a reason. It must be to look for the love of his life. In the event that this idea panned out, then Wayan must be in this place. Back in the business caravan camp, Old Man Edmund was running out of patience for that strange magic swordsman who had just up and left. They couldn't really do much. That guy was utterly unpredictable, but also insanely strong, the most deviously dangerous combination there was. Seol Mudok cleared his throat and reappeared in front of everybody. He was pleased to see that every one of the crew was there, as he was going to need a lot of information. He politely apologized for leaving so suddenly, stating that he had some business that needed attending to. Also, he had a few questions. Edmund awkwardly smiled and entertained the magic swordsman's questions, but inside, he was feeling creeped out by Mudok's smile. First, the palace master wanted just one more confirmation. If what that boy Leo had said was the truth, if they really were currently inside something called the Drake Kingdom. Edmund answered affirmatively. At the moment, the caravan was aiming to go a bit further on the trail to reach the capital city of this kingdom, the city of Barhan. Now, the magic swordsman wanted to know more about Barhan. A kid laughed and butted into the conversation, commenting that Mudok seemed to be absolutely clueless about their current location, almost as if he was one of those people who spent all their time training in the mountains. The kid had heard stories about eccentric people, oddball geniuses, like this magic swordsman, but this was his first time seeing one in the flesh. Mudok just rode the wave and let them think that he was an expert training in the mountains and had only come out today to experience the world. This was certainly a convenient excuse as to why he did not know anything about what was happening or where he was. Barhan Drake, he had never heard of these places before. Perhaps he could extract some more information from the cheeky kid. Seeing that some of them had different colored eyes, Mudok assumed that this must be a land of the Western barbarians he had only heard about. Fortunately, the kid seemed enthusiastic at the thought of teaching an expert magic swordsman about the world. It seemed like he even had something special prepared to maximize this lecture. Mudok followed the kid and asked what his name was. This cheeky little one was named Luffy. Little bro might just be the king of the pirates. Edmund watched as Luffy led Mudok to the campfire to share some info and stories, with a grimace on his face. He didn't like the magic swordsman's friendly act. He wasn't a fan of unpredictable people. That night, Luffy brought out a detailed continental map, and Mudok started learning about this place and the language the people used. As unbelievable as it was, as the lecture continued, he realized that this place was not a foreign land at all, but an entirely different world instead. The lay of the land was oddly shaped, to say the least, and the writing differed from any of the systems and dialects from the Central Plains. Furthermore, in this world, not only were there other species like the graceful elves and hard-working dwarves, but there were also similar races with their own sets of customs and culture, like the beastmen. Mudok learned that of all the diverse species in this realm, there was one that was considered to be the undisputed strongest creature, known as a dragon. Luffy described them as lizards with wings, or something along those lines. Then there was something called warp magic and magic circles. These ones might be related to the reason why he was transported to a different realm in the first place. According to the kid, warp magic could only be used by fifth circle mages and above. They would draw a round magic circle on the ground and chant their spells. Then one could instantaneously travel to wherever one wished. The better the mage's ability was, the further one could warp. The inexplicable sorceries in this place might be the toughest pill for the palace master to swallow. If there were untapped powers in this world that he had never encountered before, then what other amazing things could this new world hold? In a contemplative state of mind, Mudok looked up to the skies and noticed something he had not seen before. Up in the starry night sky were not one, not two, but 3 whole moons lighting up the evening among the clouds. Now, Mudok was a full-on believer who had somehow warped into a different world. This realm was just way too different from any place in the Central Plains. Maybe he was right in thinking that Wei-in had something to do with these events. Perhaps she really did summon him into this world. While our boy was lost in thought, the people of the caravan were in chaos. The scholarly man was yelling at someone named Savina to stop what she was trying to do. Mudok turned his gaze towards the commotion, maintaining a high sense of vigilance. He couldn't see what was happening, but from the emotionally charged noise alone, he could tell that something serious was happening at the campfire. The blonde young lady looked like she was enraged by something. She was yelling at everyone while thick and unnatural discolored veins popped up along her neck. Blondie was holding a little girl hostage with a knife in her right hand. She warned everyone to maintain their distance and not get any closer, swearing that she would kill everyone in sight. The scholarly man tried to plead with Savina to calm down and promised that when they reached the capital, they would be able to heal her sickness, as there were many capable magicians in the capital. Emma would even call in a few favors too. Savina just needed to let go of the scared little girl Annie. Savina didn't buy a word that the scholarly Charles was saying. She wasn't a fool. Even if they reached the capital on time, healers were rare. If they managed to find one, the astronomical cost of their services would be impossible to afford. There was an assassin bug's egg lodged deep in her heart, and it could hatch into a larvae at any moment, killing her. No one could deal with this problem. Charles wanted to refute what she was saying, but Savina was right. It was highly likely that she would helplessly die soon when the egg hatched into a larvae. It wouldn't just tear her apart. The same would also happen to Annie, who was exposed to the eggs at the same time. She was in the fight earlier. Savina thought that the only humane way to go was to die before the disgusting hatching began, while they were still in one piece and lucid. But the mysterious magic swordsman might have a few words to say to the young lady. Now that Mudok had a rough idea of the overarching situation, he reached his hand out while it emanated the essence of frost. No one saw him move. They just heard his voice, and suddenly Savina's dagger aimed at the child's neck was now in his hand. Mudok offered to treat her. In exchange, Savina was scared, confused, and paralyzed. Mudok just instructed her to come and sit down for a minute, as the treatment must be done soon. Edmund interjected, asking if Sir Magic Swordsman was also well-versed in the art of healing magic. Mudok admitted that he was wholly unfamiliar with the concept of magic, as he only knew a few healing techniques passed down from where he was originally from. When Mudok told Edmund and Charles to calm down for now, they felt a huge weight lifted from their shoulders. The old man came up to him and started begging for the children to be saved. He didn't have much to give as payment, but he would gladly repay the magic swordsman with all his heart. That just creeped Mudok out. He was already going to heal the kids without all the weird offerings old man Edmund proposed. He announced that he would begin the treatment, so everyone should step back a little bit. Edmund led his people to follow the magic swordsman's instructions to back off while Mudok walked closer to his patients. He assured Savina and Annie that there was no need to be so tense, as the treatment wouldn't take long to finish. All the girls had to do was close their eyes, relax, and believe in the expert's technique. Mudok started manipulating their internal energy, which seemed to cause minimal discomfort. The bug's eggs should be near their hearts, so the focus of this operation was quite sensitive. Using just his palm and his ability to sense inner energy, Mudok tried to locate the bug eggs diligently. Upon sensing some suspicious foreign material inside the girls' hearts, he stopped and his eyes widened. He had finally found it, the root cause of what made Savina act all crazy. Their hearts were under a lot of stress while the bug eggs rapidly maturing. In a tense atmosphere, everyone watches as Mudok prepares to treat Savina and Annie, who are suffering from the effects of bug eggs lodged in their hearts. Fortunately, the eggs have not yet hatched. Mudok contemplates whether he can control his energy to burn the eggs without harming the girls' hearts. As he concentrates, his hand begins to shine, and he channels his powers into their bodies. When his energy reaches inside their hearts, both girls start to glow and pant heavily from the strain of the treatment. After a moment, Mudok stands up and confidently declares that the procedure is complete. The girls are astonished, questioning if he is serious. Mudok explains that he has destroyed all the bug eggs, allowing them to rest easy now. Edmund and the others express their amazement at Mudok's abilities. Edmund approaches Mudok to confirm that both Annie and Savina are indeed fine. Leo, curious about the outcome, asks if it is all over now. Mudok reassures them, stating that there will be no side effects from the procedure. Savina expresses her gratitude, calling him a savior, and everyone bows in appreciation. As admiration for Mudok grows, especially from Luffy, he steps onto a nearby cliff and sits down under a tree. Feeling the weight of the day, he touches his necklace, feeling a deeper longing for Wayne. He gazes up at the 3 moons in the sky, wishing for a reunion. The next morning, carriages make their way toward the kingdom, with Edmund leading the exhausted group. He complains about the scorching weather. Luffy offers him some water, to which Mudok gratefully responds. Observing the water's warm temperature, Mudok decides to cool it down by releasing a bit of cold energy. After some effort, he manages to make the water colder and drinks it eagerly. Luffy comments on the intense heat of the day and checks in on Mudok, asking if he's doing all right. Mudok replies that he's managing, saying it's better than before. Luffy then notices a strange sound coming from his water bottle. Mudok, with a playful gesture, touches Luffy's face with the bottle, surprising him by revealing that it's cold. Astonished, Luffy asks why the bottle is so cold. Mudok advises him to drink it, and Luffy begins to gulp down the chilled water. As the cold liquid runs down his throat, Luffy wonders if it's like drinking ice, feeling a refreshing splash of cold throughout his body. Mudok, smiling, asks if the water is refreshing. Luffy, delighted by the experience, asks if Mudok could also freeze his own water bottle, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Mudok, having appreciated Luffy's help earlier, agrees to his request. He uses his powers to chill Luffy's bottle and, after a short while, announces that it's done. Luffy becomes overjoyed, while Mudok, still smiling, gazes at his reaction. However, Mudok's expression changes abruptly as he notices everyone else around them holding out their water bottles. Realizing that they too want their water bottles frozen, they begin pleading with him to do the same. Mudok, though slightly amused by the situation, decides to grant their wish. After using his powers again, everyone is seen joyfully sipping cold water from their bottles, all with sparkles in their eyes. Mudok smirks, thinking to himself that while it wasn't difficult to grant their requests, this might open the door to further demands. At this point, Edmund taps Charles on the shoulder, asking what's going on. Charles turns around to find Edmund behind him, who is also confused and asks someone to explain the situation. Luffy informs Edmund that the magic swordsman Mudok made him some ice water, and the others saw it too. Surprised, Edmund asks what ice water Luffy is referring to. Sweating profusely from the heat, Edmund hurries over to Mudok, who notices his condition and asks what's wrong. Without hesitation, Edmund sits in front of him, takes out his own water bottle, and requests some ice water as well. Mudok, a bit puzzled, agrees and tells Edmund to pass him the bottle. As Mudok cools the water, he reflects that staying with the caravan to learn more about this place could be beneficial, especially now that he has solved the language barrier. Offering ice water seems like a simple enough task. After a moment, Edmund starts gulping the chilled water, thanking Mudok. But soon, Edmund begins to feel something strange and questions Mudok on how he created the ice. Mudok, confused by the inquiry, asks if something is wrong. Edmund, with a serious face and sparkles in his eyes, responds with enthusiasm, stating that the ice is absolutely perfect. He explains that he has tried all the ice available on the continent, but none compare to the quality of this ice, which he finds truly extraordinary. Mudok is perplexed, asking how the ice could taste different, as he simply froze the water. Edmund clarifies that when mages create ice using the cold attribute of mana, impurities from the mana often get mixed into the ice, affecting its taste. Each mage has a unique mana signature, so creating pure ice is rare and difficult. However, the ice Mudok created was exceptionally pure, which is why it tasted so good. Realizing this, Mudok now understands why everyone reacted so enthusiastically to something as simple as ice. He almost feels pity for them, but, in a good mood, decides to make more ice for the group. As he prepares to activate his powers again, Edmund interrupts him, raising his hand toward the sky. Curious, Mudok asks what's going on. Edmund then tells him that he has a proposal for him. A few days later, Charles directs the others to hold something tightly and bring it to the back of the store. Mudok, using his power, freezes water in buckets, turning it into ice, much to the applause of everyone around. They commend him for his ability, calling him Sir Magic Swordsman. As he hears someone shouting to move faster, Mudok becomes curious and asks Edmund what's going on. Edmund reveals that he plans to revive his merchant association by selling the ice Mudok creates. Mudok reflects on this, realizing that Edmund's praise for the ice and his insistence on him being a mage were all part of a hidden agenda. He recalls Edmund mentioning that the arrogant Fourth Circle mages produce poor quality ice, which opens a niche market for high-quality ice like Mudok's. Mudok, understanding that Edmund just wants to revive his struggling business without any ill intentions, considers negotiating terms for this new partnership, as he doesn't want to work for free. Mudok proposes a 70-30 profit split, with 70% going to him for making the ice and 30% to Edmund for selling it. Edmund is surprised and asks for clarification. Mudok explains that since he's the one creating the ice, he should get the larger share. Edmund thinks about it and, recognizing that the ice will sell well, doesn't find the offer bad. However, he tries to negotiate further, pointing out that selling the ice will require wagons, workers to transport it, and mages to prevent it from melting, which adds to the upfront costs. Mudok, smiling, agrees to adjust the profit split to 60-40. Edmund, taken aback by Mudok's quick agreement, accepts the offer and suggests drafting a contract. Mudok reflects that he agreed to the negotiation because it seems like a good opportunity to learn more about the world, but the business quickly booms beyond expectations. Suddenly, Charles bursts into the room, panting and urgently calling for Sir Edmund. He tells him that he needs to come outside immediately. Domak and Edmund become curious after seeing Charles, wondering what is going on outside the store. They notice a large crowd gathered, shouting and demanding some ice, claiming they know the ice candy is from the store. One of the men introduces himself as Arnold from Narrow City, stating he came to do business with the Roll Merchant Association. Edmund tries to calm the crowd, instructing everyone to form a line, but they don't seem to listen. Suddenly, a voice echoes, calling for silence, and everyone quiets down. A girl wonders if the voice is in her head. Edmund looks back and remarks, Sir Magic Swordsman. Mudok arrives and requests that everyone remain quiet in the store. His eyes glow, and he warns that if it gets noisy again, everyone will be put out without exception. The crowd, startled, flinches and responds, yes. Edmund explains to the crowd that their merchant association only sells in bulk. If they came to purchase a small amount, he apologizes, but they will have to leave. They might sell smaller quantities in the future, but it's not possible right now. The crowd becomes worried, with one girl questioning if they came all this way for nothing. A man pleads for just a small amount, but Mudok stares at them, terrifying the crowd into leaving, muttering about their wasted trip. Mudok smiles and remarks, off they go. Edmund then addresses the remaining people, asking them to line up. A man introduces himself as being from the Meiji Merchant Association. Another introduces himself as Benjamin Butler of the Count Slave family, and another from the Arista family. Edmund is pleased, reflecting on their good fortune. The Meiji Merchant Association is one of the top 10 on the continent, and they now have the kingdom's prestigious Count Slave family and other noble families involved. Edmund knew they could make a lot of money, but he hadn't expected to be this lucky. He realizes that all this success is thanks to Sir Magic Swordsman. Without him, the Merchant Association wouldn't have had this opportunity to revive itself. Edmund notices Mudok yawning and suggests that he take a break now that the busiest part of the day is over. Mudok asks if everything is under control, and Edmund confirms that he can handle the rest. Waving his hand, Mudok acknowledges this and wishes Edmund good luck as he leaves. Edmund watches him leave and reflects. Although he feels sorry for Sir Magic Swordsman, he has his reasons for reviving this merchant association, to avenge his parents and siblings who died unjustly. To fully revive the merchant association and use the role of the merchant association to take revenge on Duke Icarus, who ruined them using the Akasa Merchant Association, he will never give up. So please cooperate with him until then, Sir Magic Swordsman. When he succeeds, he will definitely repay him. Once alone, Mudok prepares for bed, feeling grateful for the hard work he has put in and the financial success he's experienced, which has been steady. He considers gathering information about Wayan and is interrupted by a knock at the door. When he opens it, he finds Savina, a girl he recently met, who has come to bring him snacks. Excited about the arrival of his favorite treat, ice cream, Mudok invites Savina in. He remembers how she accidentally invented this delightful snack made from a mix of ice and fruit, and he expresses his gratitude for her bringing it again. As Savina encourages him to enjoy it, Mudok takes a bite and revels in its cold, sweet, and luscious flavor, reminiscent of something one might find in the North Sea. He reflects on the success of the Merchant Association and understands why it is thriving, attributing much of that success to the popularity of the ice cream. However, after quickly finishing one serving, Mudok realizes it isn't enough. He contemplates the hassle of going to get more himself, knowing that everyone else is busy. As he prepares to leave the room, he hears commotion outside. Peering out, he sees Savina trying to manage a group of people who are causing a disturbance. She urges them to line up properly, but one man challenges her, questioning her authority, while others mockingly snicker at her. Mudok watches the scene unfold, puzzled about the identity of these individuals causing the ruckus. In the evening, a group of men approaches Savina, with one of them rudely addressing her, demanding she bring out the ice cream. Another man claims they heard rumors about the treat and decided to drop by, threatening her that she better be ready if it doesn't taste good. Savina, frightened, tries to inform them that the Roll Merchant Association doesn't sell ice cream to individuals who skip the queue. She pleads for their understanding. The lead man becomes furious at her response, angrily questioning why she expects nobles to line up like commoners. He expresses his disdain for being in the same vicinity as the mere peasants and accuses her of having a death wish. Meanwhile, Mudok arrives on the scene, silently listening to the escalating confrontation. Savina, despite her fear, stands her ground and asserts that she won't serve the ice cream to nobles just because of their status. The angry man interprets her response as defiance and threatens her, suggesting she might regret her stance. Savina remains confident, thinking that even if things go awry, Mudok will come to her aid. As the tension heightens, the man draws his sword, threatening Savina. She stands firm, but the man warns her that she's provoking danger. Just as the situation seems dire, another man intervenes, calling the lead man by name and advising him against acting rashly, questioning if he really wants to lower his dignity. The lead man, named Samuel, seems surprised and apologizes, while Savina is startled by the sudden shift in the confrontation. The intervening man approaches Savina and expresses his eagerness to try the ice cream, but his piercing golden gaze sends a chill through her, causing her to tremble. As he presses her to hurry and bring out the ice cream, she feels increasingly scared and requests that he wait, hoping for a resolution to the conflict. As the tension escalates, Edmund steps into the scene, asserting that the Roll Merchant Association does not sell ice cream to those who cut in line. He questions Savina, reminding her of the rules, to which she apologizes. Mudok observes the situation and believes it seems like there is something between them for him to have such a strong reaction. Edmund then firmly instructs the nobles to leave, expressing that he cannot tolerate any further disregard for the merchant rules. Samuel, one of the nobles, becomes enraged at this perceived insult, declaring it outrageous for Edmund to challenge a noble's authority. Edmund clarifies that the refusal to sell ice cream isn't solely due to their cutting in line. He implies there's a deeper issue at play. When a noble in the crowd asks for clarification, Edmund suggests they inquire about Duke Icarus directly. This mention confuses the crowd, who are uncertain about the Duke's involvement. Suddenly, a noble steps forward, demanding to know how Edmund knows his father, Duke Icarus. Edmund is momentarily speechless, and the noble recognizes him, exclaiming that he must be one of the survivors from the Roll Merchant Association. As the noble smirks, the other nobles visibly flinch, recalling the dangerous demeanor that mirrors Justin. Justin then draws his sword, declaring that for the crime of insulting a noble, Edmund will pay with his life. He raises the sword, preparing to attack. In this moment of impending doom, Edmund, frustrated by his inability to avenge his family, closes his eyes, mentally preparing himself for death, feeling helpless in the face of such hostility. Suddenly, Mudok intervenes just as Justin is about to strike Edmund, shocking everyone present. He blocks Justin's attack effortlessly with his hand, prompting Justin to step back in disbelief. Enraged, Justin accuses Mudok of having a death wish for daring to interrupt him. Meanwhile, Mudok sighs, reflecting on the absurdity of the situation. He had simply come to get more ice cream when he encountered the nobles, who had become hostile over a line-cutting incident. Mudok addresses Justin, pointing out that the young nobles lack manners and takes this as an opportunity to teach him a lesson. Confused, Justin questions Mudok's comment, to which Mudok responds that he will correct Justin's behavior today. In response, Justin, furious and insulted, activates his magical sword and charges at Mudok, vowing to kill him. As he swings his sword with destructive force, Mudok remains calm and effortlessly dodges all of Justin's attacks. He remarks on Justin's talent, suggesting it is impressive for someone so young. However, Mudok emphasizes that no matter how many times Justin strikes, he will not land a hit. Mudok explains that righteousness should be accompanied by reason and harmony, asserting that Justin's actions reflect poorly on nobles as a whole. Despite Justin's aggression, Mudok decides to be magnanimous, choosing to adjust Justin's manners rather than retaliate with violence. Justin's anger escalates as he calls Mudok a bastard, questioning how he dares to speak to a noble in such a manner. Mudok appears behind him and explains that discipline is what Justin truly needs to learn respect. This statement takes Justin aback, and Mudok reflects on his actions and remind himself of the teachings from the Central Plains. His attachment to Wayan has made him forget the realities of the world, and he realizes that all truths ultimately come down to him. Determined to assert his dominance, Justin decides to use his skill called Survival of the Fittest, Formless Chi. He launches an attack, but Mudok easily counters it. In his attempt to dodge Mudok's blow, Justin fails and finds a hole in his wrist, causing him to scream in pain as he collapses to the ground, frightened and vulnerable. As Mudok looks at Justin, Edmund appears behind him, astonished and asking what had just transpired. The other nobles watch in terror as Mudok approaches, warning him to stop, claiming they will cut him down if he comes any closer. Undeterred, Mudok continues toward them and asks Justin why he insists on getting up when he could have remained down. The sight of Justin standing up surprises everyone, and Mudok finds it amusing that Justin is putting on such a show of bravery. Mudok activates his powers, stating that if this is how Justin wants to play, he will demonstrate how long Justin can endure. The fight turns brutal, and Justin suffers severe beatings, leaving the other nobles in terror as they witness his deteriorating state. One of the nobles rushes to Justin's side, asking if he is okay and urging him to snap out of it. As he looks around at the rest of the Justin body, he becomes shocked and confused, believes this is impossible. Charles watches the confrontation with a look of confusion, sensing the escalating tension between Mudok and Justin. Mudok contemplates that although he is only using the strength of a first-rate martial artist, Justin seems weaker than he anticipated. He debates whether to stop, realizing he doesn't have a complete understanding of this place and should avoid killing indiscriminately. He begins to walk toward Justin, who, filled with anger, demands to know who Mudok thinks he is, insisting he knows his identity as Justin Von Icarus, and how dare Mudok treat him with such disrespect. As Justin screams in fury, Mudok recognizing Justin's tenacity, but questioning whether he should simply kill Justin. He reflects that doing so would make him no better than those he despises. Meanwhile, other nobles rally around Justin, angrily shouting at Mudok, warning him that he cannot get away with disrespecting nobility. They demand answers, their voices laced with outrage. Instead of responding, Mudok notices a stick lying on the ground. He decides to use his telekinesis skill to grab it. This action leaves the nobles bewildered as they exchange confused glances. One noble, realizing what has just happened, asks about Mudok's abilities, while another mentions that he is a magic swordsman. Mudok then used his sword energy skill, exuding confidence as he steps closer to Justin. In response, Justin warns him not to approach, but Mudok's determination does not waver. He activates his sword chi while sporting a hysterical smile, sending shivers of fear through the onlookers. Mudok raises the stick triumphantly, taunting the nobles and declaring that they should come at him. He likens the stick to a club, saying it's the best remedy for their behavior. With a maniacal laugh, he begins to swing the stick, attacking the nobles, who scream in terror as they attempt to escape his wrath. The scene transitions to night, where the nobles are left in a state of disarray and injury, a testament to Mudok's overwhelming strength. Amidst the chaos, Justin, bruised and battered, admits that he was wrong and pleads for Mudok to stop. Another noble echoes his sentiments, acknowledging their mistakes. Samuel, visibly shaken, requests Mudok's forgiveness, assuring him that they won't repeat their offenses. However, Mudok places his stick to the ground, teasingly claiming he cannot hear what they are saying as the nobles shiver in fear. Frustrated, Justin's anger simmers beneath the surface, and he vows to take revenge, imagining taking Mudok's head and trampling on it. In a louder voice, he again asserts that he was wrong and promises never to make the same mistake again. Mudok smirks, knowing that a good beating is often the best lesson, regardless of where one is. He warns them to be careful moving forward, solidifying his authority. Edmund and Charles, witnessing the entire ordeal, are filled with gratitude and relief, their eyes brimming with tears as they thank Mudok for his intervention. The next morning at the castle, a meeting is convened, with Count Slave leading the discussion. He informs the assembly that they recently received a report from an informant positioned within the Serbia kingdom. King Tomalova III prompts him to elaborate, and Count Slave details the situation in the northern region of Blackstone, which all kingdoms have successfully reclaimed. He adds that the Heathen Kingdom is making efforts to develop land beyond the Sahara Desert. Duke Sergio von Icarus expresses skepticism about the feasibility of this plan, pointing out the dangers posed by monsters that inhabit the Sahara. Count Slave acknowledges the risks, but suspects that a figure named Anios may have mitigated those dangers. This revelation surprises the king, prompting Count Crash to sweat nervously as he questions the reliability of this information. Count Slave confirms its validity. Baron Arista interjects, asking for clarification about who Anios is. The king recalls hearing that Anios, one of the 10 swordsmen of the continent, has rejected numerous monetary offers and instead roams the continent without allegiance to any faction. Count Crash speculates whether Anios might have fallen in love, which leaves Count Slave momentarily speechless before admitting that this seems to be the case. This revelation piques interest, leading Count Crash to ask for more details. The king, intrigued, inquires who the object of Anios' affections is. Count Slave reveals that it is a familiar figure to them, the younger sister of the current king of Hazen, Princess Daphrin. The king reacts with amusement, chuckling at the notion that King Laird II, known for his protective nature towards a sister, would have given her away. He comments on how the sly king of Hazen is finally revealing his true colors. The king concludes that if this is true, then the Hazen kingdom now boasts 2 swordmasters, enhancing its power and influence in the region. Count Slave agrees with the king's assessment that the Hazen kingdom is likely to attempt territorial expansion, a goal they have consistently struggled to achieve since the reign of King Laird II. The king highlights the dynamics in the region. To the east, the Hazen kingdom is expanding. To the south, the commercial Serbia kingdom is developing its lands. And across the Western Sea, the Jeva Empire is also making territorial gains. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, he asks the council for their opinions on how they should respond. Duke Icarus suggests that it may be beneficial for their kingdom to pursue territorial expansion as well. The king, however, counters this by pointing out that they lack suitable land for such an endeavor and questions whether Icarus is proposing they cross the Laser Mountains to the north. The duke confirms this, arguing that they have no other viable options. This suggestion surprises the other nobles present, as the king expresses doubt about the feasibility of expanding northward. He explains that even if they manage to succeed in this endeavor, the northern area is largely covered in ice, which would render their efforts ineffective. The king concludes that moving northward would likely lead to their displacement in the ongoing power struggle, causing the nobles to hesitate. The king announces that a delegation will soon be sent to the north to address the issue of territorial expansion. He then decides to conclude the meeting, suggesting they reconvene at a later date. As the council disperses, Duke Icarus grows suspicious of the king, sensing that he and Count Slave may be concealing important information. He watches them leave the hall, contemplating their potential hidden motives. At night in the king's study, the king and Count Slave, one of his trusted retainers, are engaged in a private conversation. The king begins by asking if Count Slave has made any mistakes lately, which the count denies. The king, seemingly aware of the politics surrounding his court, suggests that the Duke Icarus, which has a reputation for treachery, may be behind recent issues, as he has a history of banishing his opponents to the north over the past decade. Despite Count Slave taking the blame for these problems, the king reassures him by emphasizing that he is the only retainer the king can truly trust. Then Count Slave humbly accepting the king's praise. The conversation then shifts to a lighter topic as the king mentions rumors of ice being sold in the capital and asks Count Slave about it. Count Slave explains that the king must be referring to ice candy sold by the Roll Trading Company, which is distinct from ordinary ice due to its sweetness, a new or unusual delicacy gaining popularity in the kingdom. In this scene, the king continues his conversation with Count Slave, asking how late the Roll Trading Company remains open. Count Slave informs the king that the company operates until quite late, and he begins to think that the king is interested in trying the ice candy. Understanding the king's desire, Count Slave suggests they could visit the company during a secret outing. The king is impressed by Count Slave's ability to anticipate his wishes, remarking that Count Slave knows him well. Count Slave humbly acknowledges that it is his duty as the king's aide to understand his desires. The king, intrigued, asks when this secret outing is planned, signaling his interest in the adventure. The scene then transitions to the Roll Trading Company, where Savina, Annie, Luffy, and Leo gather with a magic swordsman, Mudok, to make a request. They ask Mudok to teach them magic, interrupting him as he eats ice cream. Surprised, Mudok questions their sudden request. Savina, acting as the spokesperson, apologizes for their unexpected visit and acknowledges the difficulty of learning magic, but insists that they must learn it. Annie supports Savina's plea, explaining that if the trading company were to face danger again, like it did in the past, it could lead to disaster. Annie promises to train hard, demonstrating their desperation to acquire magical skills to protect the company. Mudok, however, clarifies that while their determination is admirable, he is not a magician and does not know magic. Luffy recalls that Mudok had previously mentioned something similar to martial arts, prompting Mudok to explain that what he uses is called the Ice White Divine Palm, a form of martial arts rather than magic. When Leo suggests that they could learn martial arts instead, Mudok is taken aback. Savina and Annie quickly support the idea, and the four of them plead with Mudok to teach them martial arts. Mudok, surprised by their determination and sincerity, begins to reflect on his own past. He recalls a moment from his childhood when he, too, begged someone with silvery white hair to teach him martial arts, much like the children are now doing with him. In the present, Mudok is conflicted. He knows that his primary focus should be finding Warian, and he is aware that teaching the secret martial arts of the Northern Sea is against the rules. However, he is moved by the children's resolve and their desire to protect others. He recognizes that these children have been helping him, even though they know very little about him or his past. In this new world, he begins to reconsider the strict rules he once followed. As Mudok reflects on the children's request to learn martial arts, Savina approaches him again, pleading for his help. Moved by their sincerity but unsure of what to do, Mudok tells them to return the next day for an answer. The children, thrilled at the possibility, misinterpret his words as a commitment to teach them. Luffy excitedly asks if Mudok is really going to train them, while Leo expresses deep gratitude, even vowing to remember Mudok's kindness in death. Mudok tries to clarify, but the kids are already too excited and leave the room, eagerly talking about their future martial arts abilities. As they close the door and bid him goodnight, Mudok is left to contemplate how the situation spiraled so quickly. He humorously wonders if he had been as eager and persistent at their age, reflecting on how difficult it must have been for his own master. Suddenly, his thoughts are interrupted by the sound of metal clashing in the distance, indicating trouble nearby. He realizes there is no time for rest. Meanwhile, in a nearby forest, Count Slave is embroiled in a deadly ambush. After killing one of his attackers, who was in hoodie, he struggles to catch his breath. As he contemplates whether he can survive until reinforcements arrive, he bitterly thinks about how the ambush occurred just when they were on their way to eat ice candy. His thoughts are interrupted by the sensation of hot wind behind him. Turning around, he sees a mage preparing several fireballs, which are launched towards him. Then a massive explosion happened as the fire hits him. King, filled with worry, rushes to Count Slave's side after witnessing the aftermath of a violent ambush. Concerned, the king asks if Count Slave is all right, noticing that his arm is bleeding. Count Slave reassures the king that he's fine, but apologizes for any perceived rudeness, as the situation demands swift action. The king, understanding the urgency, tells him not to worry about formalities. In the midst of the chaos, Count Slave assesses the situation, realizing that he had overlooked the presence of a mage among the attackers due to their similar attire. Quickly regaining control, he rallies his soldiers, shouting for them to stay composed and reorganize their formation to protect the king. The soldiers respond, forming a defensive line around the king. Meanwhile, the leader of the attackers, Morian, orders his men to press the assault with the intent to kill everyone, sparing no lives. The attackers respond with bloodthirsty determination, eager to claim the heads of the nobles. As they charge toward Count Slave and his soldiers, two attackers argue over who will claim the prize of killing the nobleman. But before they can strike, Count Slave demonstrates his deadly prowess in combat. With a swift, precise movement, he kills one of the attackers instantly, showcasing his exceptional skill and decisiveness in battle. Enraged by their fallen comrade, Two more attackers charge at him, but he blocks their strikes effortlessly. Determined to uncover the truth, Count Slave asks one of the attackers who sent them. The attacker, dismissive and confident in their impending victory, taunts him, saying it doesn't matter since Count Slave is about to die anyway. As Count Slave surveys the battlefield, he realizes the gravity of the situation. The earlier magic attack had already decimated many of his soldiers, and the attackers clearly have no intention of leaving any survivors. In that moment, he reflects that if they lose this battle, the consequences for the kingdom will be dire. His foremost concern is protecting the king, and he steels himself for what's to come. Suddenly, his attention shifts to the mage in the distance, who is preparing another fireball attack. Reacting quickly, Count Slave shouts to his soldiers, ordering them to gather around and protect the king from the impending magic strike. The attacker mage, confident in his timing, taunts them, claiming it's too late for them. Just as the mage is about to launch the devastating fireballs, he is unexpectedly struck down by an ice attack. The force of the hit kills the mage instantly, leaving Count Slave, the king, and the attackers in shock. Morian, the leader of the attackers, furious at the sudden turn of events, demands to know who is responsible for the unexpected ice strike. The attacker's question is soon answered as Mudok reveals himself, standing atop a tree branch nearby. With a playful laugh, Mudok casually remarks, "He has been caught?" In a swift and dramatic turn of events, Mudok vanishes from the tree branch and reappears behind Morian, the leader of the attackers, knocking out one of Morian's subordinates with ease. Mudok then casually addresses Morian, saying, "It's been a while since he wished to see the moon, but it was so loud here that he had to come." Morian, taken aback, quickly turns to face Mudok. As he processes the situation, he realizes that Mudok's ability to appear behind him without detection indicates he is no ordinary opponent. Morian's thoughts reveal his urgency. Despite their numerical superiority, they were caught off guard by Mudok's skill. He understands the stakes. They must assassinate the king and retreat swiftly to avoid any further complications. Mudok, meanwhile, observes the weapons of his enemies and smiles. Morian, undeterred, swings his blade at Mudok while instructing his subordinates to focus on killing the king, asserting that he will handle Mudok himself. With remarkable ease, Mudok blocks Morian's attack with his own sword, demonstrating his superior skill. He then remarks on the variety of swords he has encountered. Mudok alludes to the Sullen, a weapon associated with the Northern Sea Ice Palace. He invites Morian to engage him with more power. Hearing that, Morian, filled with rage, snarls, "This bastard," and lunges at Mudok with the intent to kill, vowing that Mudok won't escape alive. Mudok, unfazed and seemingly enjoying the confrontation, smiles and encourages Morian to unleash all his fury, saying how exhilarating. "Yes, let everything out." Despite Morian's aggression, Mudok easily blocks his attacks, demonstrating his superior skill and composure. However, Morian quickly adapts by retracting his left-hand weapon and attempting a series of stabbing attacks. Yet, Mudok dodges each one with ease, further frustrating Morian. Morian becomes increasingly agitated and tries a wide, furious swing with both weapons, but Mudok effortlessly sidesteps this as well. Seeing an opening, Mudok retaliates with a swift punch to his stomach, catching Morian off guard and sending him to his knees, gasping for breath. With Morian momentarily vulnerable, Mudok assumes a fighting stance and launches into a series of attacks with his sword. The first two strikes are barely deflected by Morian, leaving him exposed for Mudok's next move. Seizing the opportunity, Mudok grabs Morian's face and forcefully smashes it into the ground, laughing in a mix of triumph and mockery. As the fight reaches this fever pitch, rain begins to pour from the sky, adding a dramatic effect to the already intense atmosphere. The scene shifts to the king, who watches the confrontation with concern and confusion. He turns to Count Slave, asking, "Just what is this?" Count Slave, recognizing the need for caution in the midst of the chaos, urges the king to step back for his safety. In a tense confrontation, King expresses his belief in a Mudok potential to save the kingdom. Count Slave, seemingly bewildered, seeks clarification on the king's cryptic statement. Meanwhile, attackers, who had previously ambushed, begin to worry about Captain Morian and the skill of Mudok, speculating whether he might be a master swordsman. As the atmosphere grows more charged, Mudok approaches the attackers, visibly angry and filled with indignation. His rage stems from a trivial yet personal grievance. His ice cream melted due to the rain, which he attributes to the attackers' interference. His outburst confuses the attackers, who struggle to understand how his melted ice cream relates to their confrontation. Mudok, still fuming, threatens the attackers, asserting that he will demonstrate the power of his anger, especially one ignited by something as trivial as ice cream. He declares that he will count to 3, implying that significant consequences will follow for those who remain after his countdown. Unfazed, the attackers respond dismissively, convinced they can easily overwhelm Mudok. They prepare to strike, eager to silence him and assert their dominance. As Mudok begins his countdown, they charge at him, determined to prevent any further complaints from him. As the attacker's strikes poised to land, he reached the climax of his countdown. In a swift and unexpected maneuver, Mudok activated his protective chi, conjuring a shimmering barrier that enveloped him, effectively blocking the incoming attacks with ease. Seizing the moment, Mudok channeled his chi into his sword, channeling it into his weapon. With a fierce determination, he took a fighting stance and unleashed a brutal counterattack, proclaiming, "Don't say that his sword is a merciless one." In an instant, a multitude of sharp ice structures erupted from the blade, piercing through the attackers with overwhelming force. Both Count Slave and the king watched in astonishment as Mudok demonstrated his formidable skills. The raw power of Mudok's attack left them stunned, as they realized the depth of his abilities. After delivering his vengeance, Mudok making a graceful leap away from the scene at an incredible speed, leaving the attackers' bodies lying on the ground. Count Slave, recovering from his shock, remarked on Mudok's sudden departure. Meanwhile, the king's expression shifted to one of urgency as he acknowledged the necessity of securing Mudok's allegiance to him. Count Slave respectfully affirmed his loyalty by saying, "Your wish is my command, Your Majesty." Edmund learns that a group of children is studying magic. Initially surprised, he questions whether they are truly studying magic and whether the enigmatic swordsman, known for his magical prowess, is the one teaching them. The person he is speaking with confirms that it is indeed the swordsman instructing a select group of 4 children. Edmund finds this situation amusing, reflecting on the nature of magic and the challenges associated with learning it. He considers the rarity of those who successfully learn magic and contemplates the children's good fortune in being chosen by the swordsman. This leads him to speculate that perhaps the swordsman is overwhelmed with work, which is why he is only teaching a few students despite many others expressing a desire to learn. Feeling a sense of curiosity and excitement about the potential of these children, Edmund stands up and asks to be led to where the children are studying magic. He is optimistic that their collective progress could lead to greater achievements, suggesting that the day when they all rise to prominence may be closer than he had anticipated. Edmund approaches Mudok and initiates a conversation, thanking him for teaching magic to the children. Mudok, confused by Edmund's words, asks for clarification. Edmund cheerfully reveals that he knows about Sir Magic Swordsman teaching magic to their children and expresses deep gratitude, asking how he could possibly repay the favor. Mudok, suspecting that this was the matter the higher-ups had been discussing, remains silent. At that moment, Charles interrupts the conversation, informing Edmund that there is a guest for Sir Magic Swordsman. To everyone's surprise, the guest turns out to be the Chamberlain. With tears in his eyes, the Chamberlain falls to his knees and pleads for mercy, explaining that the king has ordered him to bring Sir Magic Swordsman back. He warns that if he fails, the king intends to retrieve him personally, indicating the seriousness of the situation. Mudok coldly tells the Chamberlain to leave, but the request makes clear the mounting pressure from the royal court. Mudok questions the Chamberlain's sincerity, asking why he should trust him. The Chamberlain, desperate, grabs Mudok's leg and pleads with him to meet with the king, continuing his emotional appeal. Edmund, witnessing this, is shocked and wonders if His Majesty truly refers to the king. The Chamberlain, undeterred by Mudok's cold demeanor, begs him not to refuse the royal summons, regardless of personal feelings toward the Chamberlain. Mudok, unimpressed, accuses the Chamberlain of harassing him daily, dismissing him and insisting he leave. Mudok, irritated by the Chamberlain's persistent pleas, distanced himself and muttered he is not sure if this is a lead-on way-in, but if things like this keep turning up. His thoughts shifted to a necklace in his possession, triggering a memory of a past conversation. In the memory, Mudok firmly refused a request from his subordinate, who was pleading with him. Mudok reminded the subordinate of the 3 years it took him to gain full control over Gangbuk and expressed concern about the impending arrival of people from the Central Plains. He questioned what kind of negotiations they could have with those slippery bastards. His subordinate advises that while sometimes strength is displayed, at other times diplomacy is key. He suggests showing restraint to highlight that the Northern Sea Ice Palace is not just about brute force, but if necessary, they can resort to power once again, and then he will take the lead. Mudok reflected on a past memory with his subordinate, deciding to let him handle the situation for now, but warned that if cooperation wasn't achieved, they would resort to force. His subordinate was unsure, but Mudok was resolute. He recalled meeting Wayan, whom he considered the woman of his destiny, reminiscing fondly about the best day of his life. Smiling at the memory, Mudok resolved to focus on Wayan rather than minor annoyances, but acknowledged that action might still be needed. Arriving at a place where his students are cultivating, Mudok observed his students practicing, with Luffy greeting him. He pondered carefully about the many issues at hand. Meanwhile, at the palace, the Chamberlain returned disappointed, informing the king that Mudok had refused the invitation again. The king, frustrated by Mudok's refusal, admitted he initially wanted to thank him for saving his life. The Chamberlain vowed to return the next day to persuade him. The king, frustrated and disheartened, asked the Chamberlain how many times have he done this? Before any further explanation, a guard announces the arrival of Princess Ishilda. The king dismisses the Chamberlain and allows Ishilda to enter, noticing his sadness. Ishilda, sensing that something is wrong, inquires about the Chamberlain's troubled expression. Rather than immediately answering, the king instructs her to sit and recounts the situation involving Mudok. Mudok, a skilled magic swordsman, has repeatedly refused the king's invitations to serve in his court, leaving the king confused and disappointed. Ishilda rises in concern, checking if her father is unharmed, to which the king reassures her that he is fine. She then asks why Mudok would reject the king's offer, but the king admits that he doesn't understand the reason for Mudok's refusal, even though he values the young man's talents and wants him by his side. Ishilda acknowledges her father's admiration for the mage, saying he must be a remarkable person. The king responds that Mudok is more than just great. He was the one responsible for creating ice and ice cream, which had become a huge sensation in the kingdom. Ishilda recalls having tried the ice cream herself and expresses her amazement. The king then reveals that the same mage who created the ice had also saved his life, and he admits to feeling greedy after receiving such valuable knowledge. Ishilda understands this, saying that anyone would feel the same way. In her thoughts, she reflects on her unforgettable first experience with ice cream and ponders the coincidence that the person who made it is the very mage her father seeks. She becomes curious about this mage's identity. As she looks out the window and sees two children enjoying ice cream, Ishilda contemplates taking the opportunity to meet Mudok herself. The scene shifts to Mudok, who is teaching a group of students in a cultivation session. As he watches them, Mudok is impressed with their rapid progress, noting that although he's only been instructing them for half a month, they've already reached the point where they can emit chi. He attributes this progress to the denser concentration of chi in this world compared to the Central Plains. Mudok interrupts the session by clapping and instructing his students to stop, acknowledging their ability to control chi. He quickly corrects himself, calling it mana instead, and announces that they will now move on to the next stage of their training. His students obediently reply, "Understood, Master," demonstrating their respect and readiness to continue learning under his guidance. At that moment, the Chamberlain arrives, addressing Mudok as Sir Magic Swordsman. Mudok, exasperated by what seems like a recurring event, wonders to himself if time is repeating itself. With a heavy sigh, he braces for yet another disturbance. However, this time, the Chamberlain is accompanied by another figure, a person in a hooded cloak. Mudok is surprised to see the Chamberlain again, having expected that he would not return since he didn't show up that morning. He questions the Chamberlain about his return. Suddenly, he notices that his necklace is glowing brightly, prompting him to turn around, thinking that perhaps Wayan is nearby. At that moment, the cloaked figure accompanying the Chamberlain reveals herself by removing her hood. To Mudok's astonishment, it is Princess Ishilda, who greets him warmly and introduces herself as the Princess of the Drake Kingdom. Mudok instantly recognizes her, thinking he found her, that's her. The scene then transitions to the Roll Trading Company house, where Ishilda expresses her knowledge of Mudok's heroic deeds, specifically that he saved her father's life. Mudok humbly replies that it kind of just happened, which Ishilda interprets as somewhat rude and ungracious. Despite this, she finds the situation amusing and laughs, revealing her light-hearted demeanor. She continues by mentioning that her father has invited Mudok to the palace to express his gratitude for his actions and questions why he declined the invitation. Before Mudok can respond, he is confronted by Ishilda, who expresses her frustration about his consistent refusals to accept an invitation. Mudok recognizes her not just by her words, but also by her angry demeanor, confirming her identity as Wayan. Ishilda interrupted Mudok's thoughts, prompting him to ask when he should go. Ishilda informed Mudok that she had come to invite him. When Mudok inquired about the timing for his visit to the palace, she suggested that tomorrow at around 11 in the morning would be suitable. As she spoke, she felt that there was more to the situation than met the eye, reflecting internally that this couldn't be everything. Mudok accepted the invitation, confirming he would see her then. Ishilda concluded the conversation by saying she would leave now. Mudok reflects on the implications of visiting the palace. He is excited about the opportunity to see Ishilda again, but is also acutely aware of the social gap between them. As the king's daughter, Ishilda occupies a position of the highest status in the kingdom, leading Mudok to ponder the challenges of bridging that divide. He fantasizes about the possibility of getting closer to her and even considers the idea of marrying her. Reflecting on a past incident, Mudok realizes the importance of careful planning to avoid repeating mistakes. He decides that he will need Edmund's assistance in executing his plans. When he shares his intentions with Edmund, the news leaves Edmund in shock. Trembling, Edmund can hardly believe what he has just heard. Mudok's declaration, his intention to marry Princess Ishilda, elicits an immediate, incredulous reaction from Edmund, who questions Mudok's sanity. In response, Mudok adopts a serious demeanor, asking for Edmund's reasoning behind his negative opinion. Sighing, he expresses a willingness to listen. Edmund explains the gravity of the situation, emphasizing that Princess Ishilda is the only child of the late Queen Swan, making her the sole legitimate heir to the throne. He stresses the social and political implications of Mudok's aspirations, pointing out that Mudok, as a foreigner with no noble status, knightly title, or recognized rank, has no realistic chance of marrying her. According to Edmund, a suitor for the princess would typically need to be a prince from another realm or a noble from a distinguished family, and they would also need to possess good looks. In light of this, Mudok responds with determination. He suggests that if he can elevate his own status or gain significant prestige, it would bolster his chances of successfully marrying Ishilda. Edmund acknowledges that if Mudok can achieve something significant, it might improve his chances of marrying Princess Ishilda. Energized by the prospect, Mudok stands up and enthusiastically declares his intent to give it a try. However, Edmund interrupts, reminding Mudok of the essential rules of etiquette that he must adhere to while in the palace. Realizing Mudok is unaware of these protocols, Edmund begins gathering books from his bookshelf, intending to educate him on proper palace etiquette. He reflects on the potential consequences of Mudok's ignorance, recognizing that any incident caused by a lack of understanding could negatively impact their own business dealings. To prevent this, Edmund commits to thoroughly teaching Mudok. However, Mudok, observing Edmund's fervor, wonders why he seems so excited about the task at hand, but ultimately accepts the need for guidance, responding that he understands and will rely on Edmund's expertise. That night, their preparations begin in earnest as Edmund instructs Mudok on maintaining proper posture, emphasizing the importance of appearance and behavior. Seol Mudok endures a lengthy lecture, focusing on the nuances of palace life. The following day, Mudok dons an expensive outfit, signaling his readiness to embark on his journey. With a sense of determination and optimism, he stated that it was time to leave. Well guys, that's the end of the video. If you like this video, comment next part in the comment section. Also, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and like the video. Thank you for watching.